All right, I have two more questions for Steve, and then we can open the mics and anybody can ask anything they want, or we can chat with each other. At the end of the book, you write, second thoughts often manifest themselves as questions. They don't necessarily have answers, but the questions themselves frequently raise doubts, regrets, or missed opportunities. Knowing what you do now, is there anything you would have done differently? Did you miss any opportunities?
You know, I was there at a very, very happy time. I don't know what it would be like to be working now when the news media companies are under such financial pressure. When I was the editor-in-chief of BusinessWeek, we had an editorial staff of 250 people. As Mark and Paula, you and Bill and people will remember, we didn't have financial problems. We had a very large editorial budget. It was just a miraculous time, and we were able to do some very good journalism. And that was true at Newsweek when I was at Newsweek with David Alpern and others. I don't know. I don't have very many regrets about my time in journalism. I just consider myself very lucky to have been there at a time when it was relatively easy compared to the way it is now. And I don't know what I would do with all the misinformation that's on Facebook or the lack of paying for content and the financial pressure that news media is under now. And it worries me, particularly worries me when I see the decline of local reporting around the country. It's a very serious problem. So I don't have a lot of regrets. I have great pleasure in realizing how lucky I was. You know, and the idea of looking back on one's life, this idea of second thoughts about, you know, your experience, various parts of your life, and your family and your friends and religion, whatever, journalism. You know, the second thoughts are not necessarily good or bad. They just are an introspection on what your life was like and how your feelings have changed based on a lifetime of experience. And the second thoughts are very profound in a lot of ways. I mean, we were able to gain insights that we didn't have as younger people. And you know, on our best days, we have something approaching wisdom about what transpired. And, you know, wisdom, as you get older and you become more vulnerable to illness or injury, you take a certain amount of pleasure in thinking that you're a lot wiser than you used to be. It may or may not be true, but we fall back on that as an antidote to the frailties of old age. And I think it's important to have second thoughts about your life and to reflect on what happened. And when I look back, I just consider myself extraordinarily lucky, both professionally and personally.
So I have one more question, and it's closely related to what Bill Holstein was asking you, and you know, based on your time at CUNY and the new generation of journalists that you helped create a program to train them and send them out into the world, are you encouraged by what you see or discouraged by what you see?
Well, the answer is both. I think that a lot of very good journalism is still being done. I'm encouraged by the fact that the students that graduate from CUNY Journalism School and other places are getting jobs and are doing well in the profession. So I find all of that encouraging, even though the practice of journalism has changed so radically. What I find discouraging is the inability to sustain quality journalism in a lot of places. Look what's happened to local newspapers throughout the country once you get away from the coasts, and even on the coast to some degree. But in middle America, there's been a serious decline in local reporting, and that's very, very discouraging and raises all kinds of questions about democracy and the political system and how we keep people informed with quality information.
Right.
So that's discouraging.
And yet there are things like the ProPublica is starting local partnerships with newspapers, and there's the Texas paper that partners with the New York Times, and then there's the Reporting in America that's sending out like 1,200 journalists to do local reporting. And so we're starting to see things like that. which I personally find encouraging. I don't know if they'll take root.
Report for America is putting 1,000 journalists in local papers around the country. That's a lot more boots on the ground. And it's precisely to offset the decline in local journalism, where so many journalists have lost their job as the business model folded on all of these newspapers. So that's encouraging. ProPublica does exceptional work, and that's very good. And you find a lot of good stories around the country in these places from these new media outlets, but it's just not enough to offset the massive decline of journalism at traditional places. So that works. So I find things to be encouraged about and find things to be discouraged about, but by no means are we giving up, and by no means is journalism dying. That's just crazy. It isn't. There's just a lot of great journalism being done. So in that
Do you
sense,
encourage young people to go into journalism if they ask you?
well, only if I can sense in them a passion for journalism, you know, and if I don't see it, I don't encourage them. You know, you got to really want to be a journalist. There's no other reason to do this. And if you want to do it, then I go gung-ho to encourage them. And I give them all kinds of advice. And I tell them how to look at schools and what to look for and all of that, by all means. But the passion has to be there in people in order to do it, because there are better ways to earn a living.